Hey guys, welcome to Pistons Talk Podcast post-game show. Before we do get into today's show, just have a quick favor to ask you guys. When you are coming in, watching this post-game podcast right now live on YouTube, hit that like button. It does help us out a ton with the YouTube algorithm, pushing out more Detroit Pistons content to you guys each and every day. And also, if you are a podcast audio listener, make sure to give us a 5-star review wherever you do get your podcast. We're on every podcast platform you guys could imagine. But, I like to start the show with that little shameless plug. But let's get into today's post-game show. And if you're new here, what we do is we break down the quarters. I take notes during the game. And then after that, I open up the show to questions, comments, and just overall thoughts. Just, keep this podcast really chill, about 30, maybe 35 minutes at the most of it, of your guys' time. But let's get into the first quarter with your Pistons. So first thing right away, Jalen Duren, 2 quick fouls, which it's a common thing with him. And like the second foul, I'll actually give him some leniency because I didn't actually think that was a foul because Jalen Johnson has like this poster dunk. And I think that the Pistons are gonna go and dribble the ball up the court, and then Scott Foster calls like a 30-second late whistle, gives Jalen Duren his second foul, so he has to go to the bench. Stu comes in for him, and obviously Stu has had a great game of rebounding the ball, protecting the rim, and we'll probably get into his shot blocking a little bit later in the podcast. But Stu gets 2 fouls, and I think the game plan for the Hawks was we're going to try to double Cade, triple team Cade, and it really didn't matter because Cade was just dissecting that defense. By the time the Hawks' help would come over, the ball was already out of Cade's hands. And the Pistons, especially in the first quarter, they were just making the extra pass, kind of like that hockey assist. The ball movement was just really crisp tonight from everybody. And the bench unit came in, and usually throughout the season, this bench unit does not do a good job of holding leads, but you had a good game from Simone Fontecchio tonight. You had a great game from Malik Beasley. And when you have both of those guys shooting the way that they're capable of shooting, it's going to be really tough for opposing teams to stop that. Pistons shot 64% in the first quarter to give them a 10-point lead, 36-26 to end it. Going into the second quarter, Malik Beasley came out, scrapping for rebounds, hustling for rebounds, made some really big-time three-point shots. And this bench unit did such a great job of just playing, sound basketball, defensive basketball on both ends of the court that Cade got a 7-minute break. Cade went to the bench in the first quarter with around the 3-minute mark. He didn't come back in until the second quarter to like around the 6.5, 7-minute mark. So Cade got a really good rest because the reserves and the second unit were scoring and they were keeping a lead. And this was a 20-point lead at one point in the second quarter. And I think a big reason for that was just the defensive pressure that they had out there. And I think you have to start with Asar Thompson, because I think if Asar Thompson doesn't play the way he did defending Trae Young tonight, this could have been a completely different game. I mean, you look at the box score for Trae Young, that's not a Trae Young game. Trae Young had a really difficult night, and Asar Thompson is a very big reason for why Trae Young struggled so much tonight. The only player that really was like scoring was like Jalen Johnson, and Dyson Daniels had a couple of just lucky offensive rebounds land in his hand, and he just had some putback baskets. But Pistons just dominated this first half, you guys. They go into halftime with a 69-51 lead against the Hawks. Coming out of halftime, they padded their lead. They were up as much as 22 points, but this is where I kind of felt like, even though that they were winning, I felt like they were playing a little bit too loose, and the turnover started happening. And I was like, you know what? Like, you have to finish this team. You can't give a team like the Hawks any type of opportunity to get back. I mean, the Hawks got this down to a 12-point game, but the Pistons started scoring more. Malik Beasley came in, settled them down a little bit. Isaiah Stewart had big back-to-back blocks for the Detroit Pistons, and the Pistons piled their lead on to 22 to end the third, 97-75. Going into the fourth, Cade was just looking to facilitate, looking to get JD involved. Had a really nice pass. JD had this super crazy lob catch where he just caught the basketball with one hand, slammed it, found the star multiple times throughout the night. And just everyone from top to bottom had a really good game. Back-to-back wins for your Pistons. They win 114-104. Don't let the final score really sway you away from a very good basketball game. This was a game that the Pistons were in control from start to finish. And with this win, they jump up from the 7th seed to the 6th seed because they've beaten the Atlanta Hawks twice this season, once at their place, once tonight in Atlanta. And this marks, I think the broadcast said, first time in 5 years since the Detroit Pistons have won in Atlanta. So they're breaking all kinds of records this year. There was a huge record with the Knicks, huge record tonight with the Hawks, but Cade's playing like an all-star. We'll know tomorrow whether or not he's going to be a starter or not, but that will get announced tomorrow. But really solid win from the Detroit Pistons tonight. I do want to get into some of your comments and questions. We're just going to take a quick commercial break. And if you guys have any things you want to talk about for the rest of this podcast, we can. All you have to do is drop it down in the comment section if you are watching live on YouTube right now, and we will get to it right after this commercial break. We'll be right back. Okay, guys, we're back. Now, this is the part of the podcast where we take in comments, questions, overall thoughts with your Detroit Pistons, maybe thoughts about the game that you wanted to touch on. This is where I open up the show for you guys. So I want to get into Dolly. He did have the first comment of tonight's post-game show. He said, awesome defense by Asar on Trae Young. Tech hit some shots. Tobias played most of his minutes and was efficient all around. Great game. I agree. I think Asar's defense on Trae was a very big reason why the Pistons did win this game. Fontecchio hitting shots also. And this is a guy that we've talked about all season long, you guys. He's a player that if he's giving you a good 10 to 12 points off your bench, it's valuable. But he's had such a weird season where games like tonight, he looks great. He seemed like he had a lot of energy, the way he was running, the way he was shooting. But there have been games even last week where seems a little bit of a step slow, trying to put the ball on the floor. Doesn't look natural, but you have to tip your cap to Simone Fontecchio tonight. Brought the energy, was hitting his shots, and overall just a good game. Like we want Tech to have a good season. We want him to have good games like this. We don't want to come up on these post-game podcasts and rag on him and say, I'm like, oh, should the Pistons look to move? I'm like, I don't want to come up here and do that. I do like to be fair, call it down the middle. I'll praise a player when they're doing well, but we also have to have tough conversations when they aren't playing well. And tonight was a game where Tech did his thing. scored, gave the Pistons good minutes off the bench. And, Tobias as well. I mean, Tobias is just one of those vets that I think a lot of fans get on him because of his contract. They don't like the box score. They're kind of box score watchers, but you can see Tobias's overall value to this team. You can see he's a player that a lot of these younger players on a roster lean on. He's a veteran presence. He can, score at all three levels. Obviously, there are games where he's in a slump and he doesn't really score a whole lot. But I mean, overall, I think that the Tobias Harris experience is something that I'm used to. And I'm happy that he's here. I mean, 23 and 21 feels good. I don't know about you guys. I'm pretty satisfied with the season so far. I have a question or a comment from Johnny. Asar might be one of the most underrated defenders in the league. Yeah, the way Asar can just switch. There was a highlight from our guy Pistons Jack. He had posted it. And it looked like a glitch because Asar was recovering defensively so fast. He was guarding Trae Young, then he was guarding DeAndre Hunter, and then Jalen Johnson, all in one possession. He's just a one-of-one athlete. Him and his brother are just freaks of nature. Cade said it best. The Thompson twins are not like the rest of the NBA. They are just one-of-one athletes. Happy that the Pistons have Asar. Happy that Asar is back from his blood clots, and you're starting to see him playing higher minutes, which I'm happy that minute restriction is slowly getting lifted each and every game. But yeah, man, the defense he played on Trae Young tonight was phenomenal. Gotta, give a shout out to Asar as well. Comment from Chuck Brewer, one of the OGs. I like our chances in Orlando. Cleveland will be a nice measuring stick, but yeah, that is going to be a challenge. Orlando should be a great game on Saturday, Chuck. I do agree. They do have Paulo Banchero back. Franz Wagner's out, but that's a team that I think they're still a great basketball team. We haven't seen them since Jaden Ivey did get injured, broke his fibia. But it'll be a very scrappy game, I'd imagine. I think the Pistons are going to get up for that game, especially where they're currently at, being in sixth place in the Eastern Conference. And I'm sure they want to get a couple games over 500, maybe 3, 4, maybe 5 games over 500, to try to keep stacking good games and giving themselves a good opportunity to get some ground in this Eastern Conference playoff battle. But Orlando should be a good game. Cleveland is a game that I'm not even looking at right now. I'm just focused on the games of this week. But the games next week are pretty tough. Cleveland's going to be a tough game. I believe I can't remember who else we play because I just look at the schedule from a week-to-week basis, but I do know we do play the Cavs next week. But it will be a good measuring stick to see where the Pistons are at because the Cavs are the best team in the Eastern Conference this year. We know that, we understand that, but Magic should be a good game this weekend. A comment from Jay Hart, 6 seed baby. This defense since the West Coast trip has been insane. As this team grows, why not bring Bruce Brown back? Playmaking and defense, and only worth 2 second-round picks or a buyout. Okay, a lot to unpack here from my guy Jay Hart. So yes, the Pistons are the 6 seed. I do agree. The way this team has played since the West Coast trip, they've definitely picked it up. I think losing to Utah really just didn't sit well with the team. And, Kate talked about they had a meeting after that game saying hey guys, we can't lose to a 5-win Utah team. We have playoff aspirations. We want to make the playoffs. And I think, since that loss to Utah on that West Coast trip, yeah, the defense has been great. There hasn't really been games where I feel that they can't, just go out there and compete for a full 48 and win the basketball game. I mean, each and every game, I feel like they have a pretty good shot. To get to your question about Bruce Brown, I wouldn't be opposed to it, but I don't think it's going to be 2 second-round picks just because that's what we traded Bruce Brown for. I don't think that the Raptors are gonna, just sell him off that dirt cheap. I think Bruce Brown will go for a pretty decent asking price because he's a good player. He's just one of those glue guys that a lot of championship teams um, want. I'm sure Denver misses Bruce Brown immensely. Bruce Brown in Detroit, bringing him back to Detroit, I think would be a lot of fun. I think he was such a big fan favorite. I was a huge fan of him. I still don't understand the Bruce Brown trade. And if you guys want to go down a rabbit hole, he explained why he got traded like during COVID season. It was kind of wild, but I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. But I think the trading deadline will be very interesting to see who the Pistons go after, what the main plan is, and are they going to be buyers or are they going to help facilitate a possible Jimmy Butler trade deal? I think those are the questions that a lot of us have, and we want answers to that, but we're going to have to wait until February 6th, it looks like, because, I don't really see them just biting the bullet right now when there's a lot of time left for these teams to get desperate. And the Pistons have all the cards right now. They have the cap space. They have the open roster spots. All these teams that want to make blockbuster trades, the Pistons will probably most likely be a team that a lot of these contenders look to reach out to. Got a comment from Dante talking about Duren and Asar. They came in clutch with stops in the fourth when our guys were running on tired legs. I agree. Duren has played really well, especially the past 4 games, double-doubles, seems more engaged. And we're at the halfway point of this season. And I was thinking about this today. Jalen Duren has had 3 coaches in 3 years, right? And I don't know what Dwayne Casey's system was. I don't know what Monty Williams' system was, if there was one. JB has been very transparent with like media about like what he expects out of Duren. And he's always said like we like to keep our bigs in the paint. But you've seen lately, Duren is still playing in the paint, but he's processing plays defensively much better where he's contesting shots. I thought the game against the Rockets, especially against Alperen Sengun, was probably his best game where he put good defensive plays together. Tonight was just a fouling issue with him, and that's something that I think the coaching staff will probably get on him. I don't know how many times this year that I've written in my notes with these post-game podcasts, 2 fouls and Duren in the first quarter. And I'm sure that's something he's aware of as well, but Duren is playing a lot better. And I think we do have to talk about it. We do have to recognize it because if you're getting defensive effort and he's putting up those double-doubles, he's only 21 years old. He's starting to, figure out what JB expects out of him. I think watching Isaiah Stewart from the bench is also something that probably helps him because Isaiah Stewart is one of the best rim protectors in the NBA this season. And it's so cool to see. I mean, you look at the box score was Stu. He scored like 2 points, 12 rebounds, and a few blocks. Like Stu is just one of those bench pieces that I think a lot of us love and respect. We don't need Stu to score a bunch of points. If he does, that's cool. But just rebounding and protecting the paint. I think they've done well. Asar as well. Asar came in, gave the Pistons good minutes tonight. Had one of his best scoring games of the season as well. Cade was really looking for him in transition, in the backdoor cuts, and those passing lanes. So good to see Asar have a good game. And I do agree with you, man. Like Duren and Asar were big parts of this victory as well tonight. I do want to get into a couple more, comments and questions. Ashton the trainer. Shout out. The trainer side of me is pissed about those turnovers, but the fan in me is lit 6 seed, baby. Here's the thing, Ashton. I didn't even realize Cade had 10 turnovers tonight until someone pointed it out to me. I feel like a lot of the turnovers that he has, if you went back and watched the game, I'm sure he'd be like, yeah, I probably shouldn't have passed the ball there. And some of it, it's like, his teammates weren't paying attention. There was a couple instances where he went to kind of do like a side shuffle pass to THJ, and THJ couldn't, hold on to the ball. I think the K turnover thing is blown out of proportion a lot of times, because if you go back and watch the games and watch the highlights, or go back and just look, a lot of these turnovers are very fixable. I don't really think that, obviously 10 turnovers a night isn't good, but I think if you can keep it like around 3 or 4, you can live with it. Cade's a really high usage guard at the end of the day, one of the most high usage guards in the NBA. I mean, Trae Young, who we just went up against, Trae Young's a turnover machine as well. But when you have guards like Cade, like Trae, they're going to turn the ball over at the end of the day. You just kind of have to live with it. But appreciate you watching, Ashton. Hope you're doing well, man. Want to get to a couple more comments and questions with you guys. I see that I missed a couple of them, so let me get into some of these. I see a comment from Ryan P. Now the Jared Goff chant should be done. Do you think we can start to win more home games? I think so. The Jared Goff chants, like, I've kind of said my piece on it. I don't want to shit on Lions fans because it looks like they're losing every single coordinator, every single coach. And that loss to Washington was really bad. I do think we can win more home games, Ryan. I really do. Fans just have to show out, and the Pistons have to kind of lower the prices too. This is the first time we've had a winning product probably since the Blake Griffin era. But like you would think that this was a top 2 seed. Like, some of the tickets are kind of crazy in terms of price, but hopefully the Pistons have maybe a fan appreciation day where we can all go out and enjoy a game. I haven't been to a Pistons game probably since the home opener. Just with my job and work, I haven't had a opportunity to go down there, but I'm definitely gonna have to come back out and watch them win, because I love going down to just games overall. Question from David B. What trade do you think Trajan is going to do? This is a great question. I think if you listen to a lot of media heads like Windhorst, like Jake Fisher, like Shams, the message over the last couple of weeks has changed, where the Pistons were willing to be a dumping ground for bad contracts, to now their thinking has changed a little bit in terms of what they want to do. They want to be buyers, but they're also willing to listen to teams that want to facilitate bigger trades. Now, what trades do I think Trajan will do or is going to do? I think if there's a play for him to get a rotational player, a secondary ball handler, maybe more wing scoring, he'll do it. I don't have an exact player off the top of my head. I know a lot of fans have been screaming for backup point guard, which I get. But at the end of the day, I think Trajan will be very calculative of what he wants to do. I'm not entirely sure what the plan is. That there's a lot of chatter of what people think the Detroit Pistons will actually do. I think at the end of the day, for the Pistons, don't expect fireworks. I don't expect an Ingram. I don't expect a Levine. Now, could you get I'll just say it, maybe Alonzo Ball? He's not expiring. He could be a pretty fun backup guard on the bench. Maybe. Could you get a Colin Sexton? I know our guy Czar mentioned that. Maybe. I would look at Trajan's first trade. Got 3 seconds for Tim Hardaway Jr. for just taking out his contract, and Tim Hardaway Jr. has been phenomenal this season. Obviously tonight didn't have his best game, but overall throughout the season, THJ's been a really good vet for these guys and been able to space the floor, and you can tell Cade loves playing with them. I would look for, small under the radar moves with this team. I don't think they're, out there looking to land Jimmy Butler in a trade. But if they can get in the Jimmy Butler trade, because I think it'll probably be a 3 to 5 team trade, you get some assets, get some draft picks, and maybe you get a rotational player that you like, then hey, they might do that. But we're really far away from what could possibly happen at the trading deadline. I have no idea, you guys. I'm a fan like you. Just give my 2 cents, give my opinions, my overall thoughts, but I have no idea what Trajan and the Pistons are going to do. I think it'll be very telling over the next couple of days, weeks leading up to February 6th, what they'll possibly do. I want to get to a couple more comments and questions with you guys. Ashton, I got you. You don't have to get me on a ticket, Ashton. I appreciate that, man. I really do. Got a comment from Samurai. What's the asking price for Sexton and Hunter expiring contracts in seconds? I hate Ainge. I hate Ainge too. I think DeAndre Hunter would be a little bit more pricey given the season he's having. It's probably one of your younger guys, which I doubt the Pistons would want to trade like a Runner or Sarr for DeAndre Hunter. Now, Sexton, on the other hand, it depends what Danny Ainge wants to do. It kind of depends where the Jazz are at. Jazz are waving the white flag for Cooper Flag, like a lot of teams will probably do over these next couple of weeks. Sexton, I could probably see, one of your rotational guys, maybe a few seconds to get him. I don't really think he's a long-term solution piece for Utah. I think Utah wants to go younger. But at the end of the day, you mentioned Danny Ainge, and Danny Ainge is probably the worst executive to try to make a trade with because he's crazy. I mean, he wanted 2 seconds for Walker Kessler, wanted like 6 firsts for Lauri Markkanen. Like, he is probably the worst executive to just try to deal with, man. Got a comment from Crawford talking about Lonzo. Lonzo would be perfect. I'll take the gamble on Zoe and BI if we extend them. I think Lonzo's a little bit more realistic. BI, I believe you would have to give up a lot to land him, and I don't really know if the Pistons really are willing to give up draft capital, a young player, and an expiring to trade for a guy that's on a $30+ million contract. And, oh, yeah, he wants over $200 million this summer. I just think it's way too risky for a guy that has injury history. I don't really know how he would mesh with Cade. I just think those two, not saying that Cade couldn't play with Ingram. I think Cade needs more of a bucket getter next to him. Not to say that Jaden Ivey can't be that bucket getter, but like a secondary option with Jaden Ivey going into next season. I don't really know if that's BI. I feel like BI would slow down this offense a lot because he likes to, get into isolations, do one-on-ones, much like what Cade does when he has the ball in his hands. And I think the Pistons would rather have Cade have the ball in his hands at the end of the day because, look at the Rockets game the other day. He scored 19 points in the third quarter alone. Basically won the Pistons that game. I'd much rather have the ball in Cade's hands when he's scoring because when he gets to his spots, when he gets hot, man, like there's nothing you can really do. He's done it multiple times this season. I remember opening night he did it. I think it was the second or third quarter. He scored like 20 straight. It was honestly insane. Do have a comment from Thomas. I'd trade for Lonzo or Bones Highland. I like Bones Highland. That's a very interesting name drop, Thomas. I definitely think that he could be out there. I think you guys are in the right headspace in terms of like targets. Like, obviously, I'd love Levine, I'd love Ingram, but I think it's those B to B- players that the Pistons could go out and target at this deadline. I have a comment from Case Cracked. Looked at Langdon. He wants a guy that can actually stay on the floor. Tobias, Tim Hardaway Jr., and Beasley all play every night. That's a great point, Case Cracked. Even Paul Reed to an extent. Paul Reed played, I think all 82 games last season. And availability, I think kind of is underrated in today's NBA. I mean, if you look at last year's roster, the Pistons had over 31 players play for their team last year. 17 of those 31 are still in the NBA. And that's crazy if you think about it. All of those vets take good care of their bodies. They're professionals, good locker room guys, and I think at the end of the day, like you want guys that can play a good, 70, 75 games a year. You don't want guys that only play 40 to 50 games a year and they're on bigger deals. And I think that was a very strategic move by Trajan to go after guys that are available. But that is definitely a good point by you, Case Crack. Thank you for bringing that up, man. I appreciate it. I'll probably do one more comment and then we'll wrap this up because I have to do some work after I'm done, chopping up this podcast audio for you guys. We will do Jay Hart. He'll have the last comment of this show. We don't need a big name or a big trade. Just gain assets and grab good rotation players. I agree. I see a lot of Pistons fans just, they like, let's go get Ingram. Let's go get Levine. Let's go get, this star. When that really hasn't been a Detroit Pistons thing. Like, I mean, outside of Rasheed Wallace, really, I mean, like all of these, good teams that we grew up on, I mean, they've been like borderline all-stars, borderline rotational players that play team basketball. And I think Trajan has a good eye for talent, getting a Malik Beasley on a $6 million deal, trading THJ. Obviously, you did give up Quentin Grimes, and he's doing better, but you got 3 seconds out of it. You're going to have the Toronto Raptors second-round pick, so it's basically going to be a late first because Toronto isn't doing well this season. You signed Tobias Harris to a 2-year deal, and he's been that professional and that veteran. And I think you can kind of see those 3 vets themselves really impact this young core, and it's impacted winning. There have been games this year where we have, THJ showing up and winning games. Tobias has won the Pistons a couple games. Malik Beasley's won games with his shooting. So I do agree with you, JR. I think it's just going to be, get some assets, get a good rotational player, maybe another vet in here, really, help propel this team to, push for the playoffs. I'll just answer this question from Joe Pesci. What's up with Bobby Klitman? This is ridiculous at this point. I would say that there's nothing really up with Bobby. JB touched on it a couple weeks ago that the reason why he's in the Motor City Cruise is for rehab purposes. Now, Bobby stuffed the stat sheet last night. I don't know if you guys saw against the Canton Charge. He had 5 steals, like 7 assists. As of right now, he's the 3rd string power forward on this team. Tobias Harris starts, Simone backs him up, and then it's Bobby. I honestly think that Bobby will play this season. I just don't know if it's going to be consistent minutes. I think the plan for him initially was to compete for rotational minutes going into the summer, but the calf contusion happened, and he's been rehabbing for the last month with the Motor City Cruise. I think that's what's going on with him at this point. And if they do play him, Joe, I would think it would be very gradual. They might give him garbage minutes and then, slowly wean him in. But as of right now, I don't really see a path for him to get consistent rotational minutes. I think if you do want to watch him, you're probably catching Motor City Cruise games. But, Bobby's going to be here for, the next 4 years. I don't think the Pistons have given up on him or anything like that. It's just you have to look at the depth chart. You have to look at what Tobias is, what Simone is. And, I think Bobby could definitely help this team. I just don't know how much, playing time, JB would give him. And I don't know if he wants to, tinker with the rotational minutes at the power forward or small forward positions. But I think you kind of have to look at the roster. But I do want to wrap up this podcast. You guys, we've been on for about 35 minutes or so. If you can, on your way out, hit that like button. It does really help the YouTube algorithm. And if you do listen on the audio side of these podcasts, make sure to give us a 5-star review. We will see you guys this Saturday immediately after the Pistons play the Orlando Magic. But until next time, you guys, take care. Go Pistons. 6 seed, baby. Let's go.